was pledged in the Ujutsu chapter. However, this is still a shallow understanding of the matter.
So, as I'm sure you're all clear, and you must have pondered on this all before, that Nichiren Daishonin is called the true Buddha because it was he who actually first, through his own self-enlightenment, revealed the way in which ordinary common mortals can attain Buddhahood. Shakyamuni Buddha at no time in his life revealed that way. It wasn't the time, the people hadn't the capacity, and in the rhythm of the development of life, of human life on this planet, the time was to come in the latter day of the law. So, Shakyamuni preached the Lotus Sutra, in which he explained that it wasn't the time, that the time for the great pure law, as he called it, to appear would be in the latter day of the law, beginning 2,000 years after he died. And the whole ceremony in the air, the treasure tower, the whole purpose of that was to make the prediction which would validate the appearance of the true or original Buddha in the latter day of the law, and his declaration of the way in which every single person, if they will make the effort to do so, if their karma permits them to do so, can attain Buddhahood. So, in other words, it is through the Lotus Sutra that Shakyamuni prepared the way for Nichiren Daishonin, who appeared at that time when Buddhism was in chaos in Japan. It was through the Lotus Sutra that Shakyamuni gave Nichiren Daishonin, who appeared 2,000 years later, all the material necessary to validate the fact that what Nichiren Daishonin was teaching was in a direct orthodox flow of Buddhism down through the ages since Shakyamuni died. And of course, it is through the Lotus Sutra and through all that Shakyamuni predicted that Nichiren Daishonin and his followers, down through the centuries, since the declaration of Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, have been able to win all the many Buddhist debates which occurred and prove through this that it was in the direct flow of Buddhism. And this is why Nichiren Shoshu, the name itself means orthodox sect. So of course there were many people who closed their ears, wouldn't listen, hated this disruption to their lives. The priests, the followers of other sects, because the crux of what Nichiren Daishonin was teaching was that the only practice for the age of Mappo is Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, the three great secret laws, which is the essence of the Lotus Sutra, which Shakyamuni said was his supreme teaching. So therefore, Nichiren Daishonin had to be so strict and say to people, you're practicing incorrectly. Your practice is not the practice as taught by Shakyamuni Buddha for the age of the latter day of the law. And everyone turned on him, as he knew they would, and indeed as Shakyamuni had predicted himself. However, amazingly enough, Nichiren Daishonin lived his full lifespan, was able to inscribe the Daiga Honzen and establish the roots of Buddhism into the soil of Japan, or you could say into the soil of this world as a whole. So it is clear from this 2 points. Firstly, that Shakyamuni Buddha was not enlightened in front of the Bodhi tree. He'd been enlightened ages previously in the remote past, which he called Kohyaku Jintenga. And furthermore, he states in the Lotus Sutra, I too practiced the Bodhisattva austerities. In other words, he too practiced under a great master of Buddhism who taught him how to attain enlightenment. And that great master, of course, must have been the original Buddha, who appeared later and declared Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. You all follow? Right?
Now is when the Bodhisattvas of the earth will appear in this country. In the true object of worship, the Daishonin states, now is when the Bodhisattvas of the earth will appear in this country and establish the supreme object of worship on the earth, which depicts Shakyamuni Buddha of the essential teaching attending the original Buddha. This object of worship has never appeared in India or China. In other words, though in his outward function Nichiren Daishonin acts as the leader of the Bodhisattvas of the earth, who was entrusted with propagation of the mystic law by Shakyamuni, he is in fact the Buddha of Kuon Ganjo, or time without beginning. It is precisely because he is the original Buddha that he was able to inscribe the object of worship in which Shakyamuni Buddha of the essential teaching is depicted attending him. Concerning the significance of the appearance of the Bodhisattvas of the earth, the Ongi Kodan states, Nichiren and his disciples who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are the Bodhisattvas who emerged from the earth. You should not suppose this to refer to any apart from them. Now in the latter day of the law, Nichiren Daishonin and his disciples are the Bodhisattvas who emerged from the earth. There are no followers of the Bodhisattvas of the earth apart from us, who are striving to accomplish Kosen Rufu. Strictly speaking, Bodhisattvas of the earth refers to Nichiren Daishonin. As emissaries of the Daishonin in the present evil latter age, we embrace the mystic law and advance Kosen Rufu. Hence, we are the followers of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. Each one of us must have a sense of our great importance, status, and mission in this regard. For this reason, I hope that based on the mystic law and with ever deeper faith, stronger practice and magnanimity, we will protect one another and advance in beautiful unity.
Thank you. So I hope that is clear. The term followers of the Bodhisattvas of the earth is made out of respect for Nichiren Daishonin. We are, of course, Bodhisattvas of the earth, but we follow the leadership of the great leader of the Bodhisattvas of the earth called Jogyo. Jogyo, who was, if you like, it's often put, the transient life state or mission of Nichiren Daishonin, who then revealed himself as the Buddha of Kuon Ganjo, the Buddha of time without beginning, the self-enlightened Buddha who was able to declare Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and to inscribe the Gohonzon. Okay? So Nichiren Daishonin was self-enlightened. In other words, from the beginning of time without beginning, he has always been the person who was born with the enlightened state inherent in his life, and through that was able to take the first step. Right? So you can say that Stevenson, okay, was born, and inherent in his life was the ability to create the steam engine. It wasn't that enlightenment or partial enlightenment, actually, of how to create a steam engine. It wasn't in anyone else's life. He was the first person, through his partial enlightenment, who was able to make a steam engine. Nichiren Daishonin, in the same way, was, of course, not partially enlightened, but totally enlightenment to the existence of the natural law of life, which can be expressed in the terms Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and which he then embodied in the Gohonzon as the representation of a human being one with the law of life, so that each of us, through chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to that Gohonzon, can achieve exactly the same life state, which is one with the law of the universe itself. So where you see saha world, saha means a world in which there is suffering. We are born into this saha world, this world of suffering, so that we can help people to overcome that suffering through discovering Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the three great secret laws, ourselves, and then putting others out of that pit of suffering. This is the task of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. Right, Robert.
Again, there is a well-known passage in the Gosho, The True Entity of Life, which states, "There should be no discrimination among those who propagate the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo in the latter day of the law, be they men or women. Were they not bodhisattvas of the earth, they could not chant the Daimoku." This passage also clarifies how respect-worthy are those who devote themselves to Kosen Rufu. It states that there should be no discrimination among men or women. In the world of the mystic law, there is no discrimination on the basis of gender. One must not look down upon other members because of their sex. We must have mutual respect for each other. Again, in the world of faith, there is absolutely no discrimination on the basis of social standing. Regardless of who someone may be, all people are equal before the Daishonin. This is a very important teaching of Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism. The passage continues, "Only I, Nichiren, at first chanted Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, but then 2, 3, and 100 followed, chanting and teaching others. Likewise, propagation will unfold this way in the future. Doesn't this signify emerging from the earth? With this passage engraved in our hearts, we have been struggling for the realization of Kosen Rufu, and to the present, our movement has advanced exactly as it describes. This is a time unprecedented in the history of the world, when friends embracing the true teachings of Nichiren Daishonin are carrying out vigorous activities throughout the country and in all parts of the world. We have achieved this in Japan despite a continual onslaught of malicious accusations. Regarding emerging from the earth in the Gosho, teachings recorded by Nikko, Nichiren Daishonin also says, "Earth refers to the life of us human beings. Emerging indicates that at the time of Kosen Rufu, all people throughout the world must become votaries of the Lotus Sutra. Just as plants and grasses of all kinds, as well as large trees, are nourished by the earth, life, based on the mystic law, generates infinite value. The term votary of the Lotus Sutra specifically indicates Nichiren Daishonin. Generally, however, it refers to all people who are seeking to accomplish Kosen Rufu in accordance with the Daishonin's teaching. This passage indicates that a time will come when the Daishonin's teachings have been put into practice, a time when Buddhism has been widely spread, and people throughout the world recite the Daimoku as votaries of the Lotus Sutra. This will be a time of emerging from the earth in the true sense. I do not think I am alone in sensing that we are now approaching just such a time."
I think we can all sense that ourselves. We can't doubt the extraordinary response to Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism in this country, compared, say, to what it was even only 3-4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, we could have had something, as we did every so often in the press, and that would be that. We'd say, "Oh, that's good," but there were no signs of any public response to it. Today, in the various press reports, media reports on Alice, and subsequent, even quite odd articles, which some journalists dreamt up in the Sunday, I think it was the Sunday Telegraph supplement, but the telephone never stopped ringing at Richmond. I think we had 500 inquiries from people all over the country to that one small, extraordinarily, really inaccurate article. But never mind, it had a profound effect. And of course, all those people, the details of them have been sent the Art of Living, and also their local districts, address, telephone number. And it's just, astonishing compared to what it was 5 or 6 years ago. So truly, it really is the time now, and we can't doubt it. We can't doubt it through the response to Alice, to the effect that Alice had on something around 23,000 people's lives who saw it. They'll never forget it. Many of those 23,000 will come to the gods in the end. So, without a shadow of doubt, time has come, and this is the reason. It's all in rhythm. The time has to come. It's in the rhythm of life that the time will come in each country of the world. It's inevitable. As Nichiren Daishonin said, as sure as an arrow aimed at the earth cannot miss its target. But nevertheless, of course, we have to make sure, if possible, that we hasten the time. There is that sense of urgency. It must come. But on the other hand, it must come because we practice to the gonzen and do gongyo and practice to the best of our ability, just exactly as the Buddha taught. We're bound to do it. But nevertheless, we still have to do it, fighting against the negative part of our lives. All right, Robert?
Next, I would like to talk about the significance of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. First, I would like to clarify the difference between Bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching or Bodhisattvas from the other worlds and the Bodhisattvas of the earth. In connection with this, the Gosho, the true object of worship, states, essentially, the Bodhisattvas of the theoretical teachings and the Bodhisattvas of the other worlds were not qualified to inherit Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the heart of the Juryo chapter, which only Nichiren has realized. At the dawn of the latter day, evil people who slander the law would fill the land, and so the Buddha rejected their pledge and instead summoned the Bodhisattvas of the earth. He entrusted Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to them for the salvation of all mankind.
Please go on.
Clarifying the difference between the Bodhisattvas of the earth and the Bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching and Bodhisattvas of other worlds, the 26th High Priest of Nichiren Shoshu, Nichiren Daishonin, gives the reasons for the Buddha's rejection of the latter two groups of Bodhisattvas and for his selection of the Bodhisattvas of the essential teaching, Bodhisattvas of the earth, as follows. In contrast to the Bodhisattvas of the other worlds, the Bodhisattvas of the essential teaching are 1. Shakyamuni's direct disciples, 2. They always dwell in this saha world, and 3. They have a particularly deep relation to the living beings in the saha world in the time after the Buddha's death. The first point, that the Bodhisattvas of the essential teaching are Shakyamuni's direct disciples, means that they are the direct disciples of Shakyamuni as the Buddha of Kuon Ganjo, that is, of Nichiren Daishonin. The second point, that they dwell always in this saha world, indicates that they are bodhisattvas who have been continually living and practicing in the saha, real world, and not in some other world. The third point, that they have a particularly deep relation to the living beings in the saha world, means that they have a profound connection with the living beings in the evil world of the latter day of the law, and that they possess the mission and power to lead them to salvation. Again, in contrast to the bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching, Nichiren Daishonin explains that 1. The bodhisattvas of the essential teaching are the original disciples of Shakyamuni. 2. That they have accumulated good causes deep within their lives over a long period of time. And 3. That they have abundant fortune to benefit the living beings of the latter day of the law. In other words, from the standpoint of the meaning hidden in the depths, the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching are the original disciples of the Buddha of Kuon Ganjo, who appeared as Nichiren Daishonin in the latter day of the law. From time without beginning, they have been carrying out the Buddhist practice. Therefore, their good fortune is strong enough to benefit the people in the latter day and to enable them to spread Buddhism in a world which is replete with the 5 impurities. With respect to the bodhisattvas of the earth, Nichiren Daishonin states, these great bodhisattvas benefit the living beings of the latter day of the law as naturally as fish swim in water and as freely as birds fly through the sky. In other words, it is as natural for the bodhisattvas of the earth to save the unfortunate beings of the latter day as it is for fish to swim in water or for birds to fly through the air. By doing so, moreover, they are able to manifest the strength to be completely free of obstacles. Though this passage is referring specifically to the Daishonin, it also indicates that we, who in the latter day are spreading the mystic law exactly as the Daishonin teaches, will without fail be able to accumulate great fortitude and manifest outstanding leadership capability. I hope that all of you are confident that in addition, due to your efforts, you are receiving the protection of Nichiren Daishonin as well as the Buddhist gods. Concerning awareness of one's mission as a follower of the Bodhisattvas of the earth, President Toda once said, the fact that we have been born in the latter day of the law as followers of the Bodhisattvas of the earth is something which only we who have faith in the Daigo Honzen can perceive. The latter day of the law here is thus equal to Kuan Ganjo in the sense that we are living in the wonderful land of the original Buddha. However, this supreme land is not visible to those whose lives are polluted by slander. The nature of our mission here is not only utterly unrecognizable to them, it is even beyond their imagination. President Toda also once spoke in this way: some people spend their lives engaged in the world of politics. Others devote themselves to philanthropic work. Still others are active in the realms of culture and education. Each person has a special mission to carry out the course of his lifetime. Our mission for Kosen Rufu, however, is fundamentally different. It is the greatest mission for a human being, to save all living beings throughout the three existences of past, present and future.
Well, that is a very difficult, rather heavy series of paragraphs, I think. And it's not something that you can read just once and understand. So I really ask you to read that guidance, and in fact all of this guidance, many times. I certainly read it at least 5 times, if not 6, since it was first published in the UK Express. We can't take it in one go, but I hope that what I've said so far will help you to grasp it and really take it deep into one's life. Because in a sense, this puts us all in the right context in terms of the New Century group, as I think you can see. So he talks at one point here, or rather quoting Nichiren Daishonin, that the Bodhisattvas of the earth who appear are direct disciples of Shakyamuni. This is confusing, but the meaning there, as President Ikeda says, is to say of Shakyamuni in terms of the understanding at that time in the Lotus Sutra, which was that he was the Buddha, and therefore the Buddha of Kuan Ganjo, of time without beginning, right? And ending. Do you follow? Then, of course, in terms of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, of the 3 great secret laws, the Buddha, or the true Buddha, or the original Buddha, is the self-enlightened Buddha who revealed Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the Gohonzon. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the Gohonzon wasn't revealed until 2,000 years after Shakyamuni died. Therefore, people viewed him as the Buddha, right? First of all, they thought he was the first Buddha ever when he attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. Then they were shocked because he said, that wasn't when I attained enlightenment, I attained it in Gohyaku Jintengo. Still, they were looking upon him as the Buddha, right? The first Buddha ever in terms of the world. Then there was a further shock. He said, I too practiced the Bodhisattvas austerities, which means that he too was taught by somebody. And then, of course, he revealed finally in the Lotus Sutra his prediction of the way things would go and the appearance of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. So he was looked upon as the Buddha of Kuan Ganjo in terms of the Lotus Sutra which he preached, right? But events proved historically that he was not. And of course he predicted many things to indicate that some other great figure was going to appear, who he called the votary of the Lotus Sutra. Then Nichiren Daishonin appeared and fulfilled all the predictions exactly as Shakyamuni had said they would occur, and revealed the essence of the Juryo chapter, which was Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and inscribed the Gohonzon. Right? So in terms of 2,000 years later, and what occurred then, the Buddha of Kuan Ganjo, of course, was Nichiren Daishonin. Shakyamuni never said how we could attain enlightenment. This is the point. Shakyamuni gave his experience of enlightenment. Right? Only the Buddha, who was Nichiren Daishonin, actually revealed to us how to attain enlightenment. And he was not taught. It was his enlightenment, inherent in his life. Okay? So it then becomes plain that the ultimate Buddha of Kuan Ganjo is the self-enlightened Buddha, self-enlightened Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, of the three great secret laws, which he then embodied in the Gohonzon. And this, of course, was the great pure law which Shakyamuni stated in the Lotus Sutra would appear in the latter day out of the chaos and misery of those times, the early days of the latter day of the law, which were called the Age of Mappo. Do you follow? So the Buddha of Kuan Ganjo, in terms of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, and even in terms of the theoretical teachings, the first 14 chapters of the Lotus Sutra, was thought to be Shakyamuni Buddha. But, of course, once the essential teachings were taught, things began to change. Shakyamuni was making predictions about other great events in the future, which revealed in due course of time the Buddha of Kuan Ganjo was none other than Nichiren Daishonin. Do you follow? It's very complicated because we're concertinaing time and history. If one actually lived with each one of those times, one could understand it much more easily. But we have to concertina history, which seems very confusing. In these various statements here, Sensei brings out the great attributes of the Bodhisattvas of the earth, the strength to be completely free of obstacles. We learn to become free of obstacles by proving the power of the Gohonzon to overcome all obstacles. Therefore, an obstacle is no longer an obstacle, is it? It's just another challenge. We can be free of the fear and upset caused by obstacles, because we know, as we get experience after experience after experience, that we can overcome them. Another, to accumulate great fortitude and manifest outstanding leadership capability. Gradually, to our astonishment maybe, we discover our mission. And our mission is, of course, to spread the teachings of Nichiren Daishonin and to help those who are beginning to practice to become strong and stand on their own feet. And we receive, as a result, the protection of Nichiren Daishonin as well as the Buddhist gods. So unfailingly, the protection is there. When we're changing karma, for example, we know some big change is occurring in our lives. We can get a bit scared even sometimes. Maybe it's financial karma. We seem to be surrounded by debts. But if we're determined to change it, and we're not prepared to go on living in that way, and we use the power of the Gohonzon to change it, in the process of changing that karma, though it may be painful at times, we are always protected. In my own experience, changing my horrible financial karma, it was scary at times, but incredibly we were always protected. When we thought, we had nothing left, somehow something in terms of money appeared and enabled us to continue to do activities, what's more, as well as, exist adequately. So wherever you look, you see this protection, which is absolutely unfailing, provided we're making the great effort, and provided we're not blaming other things or other people for our situation, and in that way slandering. So, of course, Nichiren Daishonin, especially in his Gosho to Shijo Kingo, he makes this so clear. in many of those Goshas. He says that Shija Kingo had all his land confiscated by his lord, If you remain bitter, never will the Buddhist gods protect you, trying to cast blame on others. But if you stand strongly and determined to change this situation through the power of the Buddhist practice, in other words, he said, using only the strategy of the Lotus Sutra, all the Buddhist gods will protect you. So this is really, my experience, and I'm sure many of your experiences too. Provided we go on, provided we struggle not to doubt, provided we never give up the practice, never give up trying to teach others through shakabuku, definitely, no matter what, we are protected, and in the end we'll come through and find that period, as it's often put, of great evil, of great difficulty, is followed by the greatest good. Okay, so we've out of time now. We'll have to stop. But what I would like you to do is, and please understand this is it's a necessity for you as New Century Group members now, to really read this at least 3 times. Maybe some of you have read it 3 times already. All right, we'll let you off. Read it once more. But read it at least 3 times, because in the subsequent paragraphs as well, it's all incredibly important to understand one's true, if you like, place in the universe. This is what this incredible guidance does for you. So next time we all meet, we begin with the real curriculum, as it were, of the New Century Group, and we dive straight in to Buddhism and politics, which is a good sort of deep end to throw ourselves into right at the beginning. So anyway, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you very much for coming. And I'm sure you'll find, that you will get immense value out of this, just as I do. And anyway, it's a great chance for us all to meet on a regular basis. Okay, thank you very much indeed.